welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and welcome to another weekly summer reading vlog. By the time this video comes out, actually, the month of August will technically be over, so this is my race to the finish to see how many more spaces on my bingo board I can actually fill. I'm not optimistic that I can black it out. Part of my problem is that all of the books that I have completed so far this month don't count for my bingo board at all, because they were already pre-planned buddy reads. So the one book that I would love to finish, but I have really doubts that I can finish this week that would count for space on my bingo board, is Oathbringer. But as you can see, I'm just like about halfway, which means I have like 600 pages left to read in a week, which feels extremely unrealistic, especially given the fact that I have two books that I absolutely have to finish for book clubs, one of which is The Saturdays by Elizabeth Enright. This is a book that I'm reading with my Patreon, and I'm really excited to discuss this with them. Today is Friday, and we're having our discussion tomorrow, and guess what? I haven't even started this. Part of it is that I was waiting for my daughter, but part of it is also I was trying to finish A Natural History of Dragons because that book club came first. But this is a middle grade and it's less than 200 pages. The audiobook is like 4 hours long. So I'm feeling like there's a really good chance that I can easily finish this. It's Friday afternoon right now and I don't have to have it finished till Saturday evening. So I really feel like I can totally finish this within the time period, but alas, it does not count for space on my bingo board. And neither does The Faithful Spy by John Hendricks, which I have to finish by next Tuesday because this is a book club pick that I am like reading with Chantel from Chantel Reads All Day's book club. It is going to be a shorter read because the pages are not just filled with text. We've got some pages that are more infographic. We've got some pages that are more like graphic novels or, you know, so it's very, very colorful. I'm really excited about the artwork in this as well. This is a biography of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. So these are like my biggest priority books because I have book clubs that I have to have them finished for. But like the Dietrich Bonhoeffer book is also under 200 pages. So those should be easy finishes. But the squares that I still have left for my bingo board, one of them is a mythology space. And I was going to read Lore by Alexander Bracken for that one. And that's like over 500 pages, I think. So I feel like there's not a good chance I'm going to finish that one. Then for my second chance author, I was going to read, what's the name of that book? I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zuzak. There's a chance maybe I could finish that one. So I may try to see if I can find something to swap out for that mythology space and then try to read the other ones later. I have read one book that finished a space on my bingo board, and that is a seaside or an island setting. And I was going to read The Arm and the Starfish by Madeline L'Engle, but I ended up buddy reading Winter in Sokjo with some friends, and I never even vlogged about that because I was sick that week that I ended up finishing it. I ended up getting sick that week, so I never posted a vlog that week. So I don't have to worry about The Arm of the Starfish, but I still have like this bad boy plus a mythology prompt plus a second chance author prompt, and it's like these ones aren't gonna count. So I kind of feel like I'm probably not gonna black out my bingo board, but you are getting a front row seat to the dash to the finish line. Because I didn't black it out last year either, but the first year I did it, I did black out my bingo board on the last day. So there's a chance, especially if I make a couple of last minute substitutions. We'll see. I will keep you updated, but those are my reading plans so far for this week. And yeah, I will check in later. Hi, it's Wednesday, so we're halfway through the week, and I have had multiple live shows and multiple books finished, really in the 11th hour. That has kind of been the theme of the past week or so for me. Last week I shared with you that I finished A Natural History of Dragons mere hours before my book club meeting for that one, and the Saturdays was no different, that I finished this in like morning to like noonish, and I had a Zoom call with my patrons at 7. So yeah, that was a whole thing, but I made it. That's the important thing. I made it, and I loved this book. This was another 5-star book. I had 2 5-star books in a row, which was just phenomenal. So this is a middle grade book. It's a story about 4 siblings who live in New York City. They live with their dad and a housekeeper named Cuffy, and some of the descriptions in this book are just so funny, and I just loved it. So these 4 siblings, they are feeling really, really bored on a rainy Saturday, and they decide that for the foreseeable future, what they are going to do is they're going to pool their allowances together, and each kid will get a turn using that money doing what they want to do. So one of the girls has really, really wanted to go see a certain show, and one of the boys, he wants to go to like an opera, an orchestra thing, because he's super into music. And so everyone has different things that they want to do, and they decide that they are going to pool their resources so that way they are able to do these really cool things that they can't do on their own allowances. And so the chapter of the book each takes like a Saturday and covers a Saturday and whatever adventure whatever child gets into on that Saturday. And I just really love this book. I just love the dynamic of the family. It has some really amazing humor. So fun to be able to read this with Claire and have her be part of the Patreon discussion. And one of my patrons is Christy Liz from Dostoevsky in Space, and this is one of her childhood favorites. So it was so cool to be able to read this and hear her thoughts, because she's like, oh, you know, I always wonder, is it nostalgia? Is that why I love it so much? And I'm reading it as an adult for the first time, and Claire's reading it as an 11-year-old for the first time, and we both gave it 5 stars. We both just absolutely loved it. So even though there's lots of really funny moments in this, I really wanted to read my favorite quote from the book, where the second daughter, Randy, short for Miranda, she's meeting with an older lady that's telling her this amazing story about her life, and Randy says, "It was wonderful. Things like that never happened to us. We lead a humdrum life when I think about it. It's funny how it doesn't seem humdrum. That's because you have eyes the better to see with, my dear, and ears the better to hear with. Nobody who has them and uses them is likely to find life humdrum very often." I just love that. I think that Elizabeth Enright does an amazing job of capturing childhood. This is the second book of hers I've read. We also read Thimble Summer a couple of years ago during the summer. And the way that she captures how children feel like reading this, there were so many times where kids would do a certain thing. Like there's a point where 2 of the siblings together are like taking all these old like lotions and medicines and things from the medicine cabinet that are like expired and can't be used, and they're mixing them together, and they're doing like a play drug store. And it's like, man, I would do that kind of stuff. Every time I was like doing the dishes, I'd pretend I was on a cooking show, and I'd be mixing stuff together in the sink, and like it's just so relatable to childhood, and she captures it so well. So last night I had a live show scheduled with Chantel Reads All Day on her channel for her book club, and she asked me to partner with her. And so we read The Faithful Spy by John Hendricks. This is a graphic biography of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and I finished this a mere like 3 hours before that live show. So this is just like the trend for me. I had gotten so far behind and had such a difficult time getting the amount of reading done that I needed to because of sickness and house guests and business and starting school and a birthday party in August. Has just been crazy, but I did finish this in time. So like I said, this is a biography of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a pastor who lived in Germany during World War II. If you haven't heard of him, I think a lot of people have heard of some of his books. In particular, probably The Cost of Discipleship is probably his most popular and well-known work. But this is kind of laid out, like obviously there is lots of pictures, and some of the pages are laid out kind of graphic novel style, like this one here. And then some of them are just kind of more infographic, like that right there. And so it's kind of a mix. On our live last night, someone described it as mixed media because it's not just a graphic novel, and I think that's a great description. So I really enjoyed this one. I'm super glad that I read this. I knew a little bit about Bonhoeffer's life. I read some of his letters and papers from prison, and so I knew the background of why he was there, how he got there, how his story ended. I knew about that. But there was a lot of things about this that I did not know. And not just about Bonhoeffer's life, but about World War II in general. We get a whole background picture of how Hitler rose to power, how the churches in Germany started supporting Hitler and started, making all these compromises, and how so many good people in Germany were completely deceived by Hitler, had no idea what he was really like, what he was really doing, because he was so charismatic and just presented this front to Germany, who was already very, very devastated from World War I. A really good example in here is they talk about the inflation that happened shortly after World War I happened. And, the world was struggling with a Great Depression. And, United States is no different, but not to the level that Germany was, because in 1921, 75 marks was the equivalent of $1. And 1 year later, 4 billion marks was the equivalent of $1. That is insane within 1 year. Absolutely crazy. And so it just kind of talks about how they were so downtrodden that they were looking for anything that could, give them some sort of victory, prosperity, pull them out of this, and how much people didn't know a lot of what Hitler was doing in concentration camps, which I did know that. And it doesn't focus a lot on concentration camps or the Holocaust. It does mention those things, but that's not the primary goal of this story. So as a result of that, there was so much I learned that I didn't know, and that was really, really interesting, especially all the assassination attempts on Hitler's life and all of that kind of stuff, and the conspiracy that was happening within, and the moral quandary that Bonhoeffer found himself in of if someone is killing all these people and someone is causing all this harm, is it wrong to kill them? And the duplicity of living the life as a spy and having to lie to your family and friends about what you're really doing and what you're really like. Is it okay to lie if you're doing it for this greater good? And kind of the wrestling of the ethics of that situation was super interesting as well. I really loved the art style. I think it's phenomenal. I think that John Hendricks does such a great job, and he also did a really amazing job of letting you know which parts were actually direct quotes from Bonhoeffer or whoever he was talking about, because he'd have an asterisk by those quotes. Otherwise, you'd know that he paraphrased or maybe was even being a bit speculative at times. I have not read Eric Metaxas's massive biography on Bonhoeffer, though I've heard amazing things about it. So I feel like this was a really good introduction into Bonhoeffer's life, and was a fairly quick read. I couldn't read it as fast as you would read a normal graphic novel, just because, like I said, there's a lot more text on some pages. But I felt like it was really, really well done. We will be, I think through this school year, going through World War I, and so I think next year we'll be heading into World War II. So my intention is to schedule this book for Claire at that point. So that is what I have finished so far, and I'm really happy to have finished all of the books that I had serious commitments for. And by serious commitments, I mean I had to lead a discussion or had to be on a live show or something like that. So now that I've done that, what's left? What am I still in progress in? Oathbringer. I would love to finish this by the end of the week. I feel like that's probably not possible, because I would love to fill out my 500 pages or more space on my bingo board with this. I was doing a little research because I still have several spaces left, and I could black out my board if I did some shuffling, because there are some books on my bingo board that are over 500 pages that I could swap that in and swap something else in there and read a couple shorter works and potentially still black out my bingo board. And I'm kind of trying to decide what I want to do, because I'd rather be reading Oathbringer. I think I'm close to the 60% mark. So I'm about 700 pages into this 1,300 page book, but I really do want to finish it. It really is what I want to be reading. So the question is, will I shift things around so I can potentially black out my board? Because I have a lot of short stories or novellas that are sci-fi or fantasy that I could use for my standalone fantasy or sci-fi space. I have a book that my friend Dia sent to Claire for her birthday called The Pig Scrolls, which is like a Greek mythology book, and I could use that for my mythology space. I do have a book that I read this month that I can count for a second chance author. So the books that I was going to put in those spaces, I'm not going to have time for because they were all for my Read or Rid project, and all 3 of those books are just sitting there. And so I was really hoping to get to them, but I just unfortunately got really behind. So we'll see if I try to read a couple of short works so that way I can still try to black out my bingo board, or if I just focus on this bad boy and get as far as I can, because I have some really big books coming up in September. So we'll kind of see where that goes. It's Saturday morning. I'm hoping to get this video up on Saturday at some point, but just been very behind. There's been lots and lots of busyness this week. Let's talk about reading. Did I finish my bingo board? The short answer is no. Do you want the long answer? The long answer is that I can switch a few things around on my board and make it so there's one space left, and that's the mythology space. I'm not going to get into my bingo board a ton, even though I did, tease this video to see as a race to the finish line, but I am planning to do a live show on Monday for Labor Day to draw the winner for Summer Book Bingo and talk about bingo board just a little bit more. But I do want to update you on what I did finish. So the sad story actually is that I did not finish Oathbringer, which I kind of knew I wasn't going to, unfortunately. But look how far I am. I'm so excited. I'm like 860 pages in. That's like a huge jump from the beginning of this video. I was just a tiny bit over halfway through, and now I'm like very firmly like 3/4 of the way through, and I'm really excited. I'm really hoping to be able to finish it over the weekend. I'm enjoying this book so much. I know it has taken me forever to read it, but I honestly and truly adore every second I have spent in this book, more so than the first 2 books, which is shocking. And again, I've mentioned this before, I think it's because Way of Kings you feel pretty lost because there's just so much being introduced. And then I think I waited 8 months in between Way of Kings and Words of Radiance, and I had forgotten way too many things, so I felt really lost in that one too. So Oathbringer is officially the first Stormlight book I haven't felt totally lost in, and I'm loving it. And also right now we're in a location, I don't want to be spoilery, but we're in a location that was in Way of Kings that Shallan visited, and it is just like the coolest to be back there just because I've always found that place really, really interesting. So I'm really excited to see where this is going to go, and I love Wit in this book. I love him. His interactions with Shallan have just been fantastic, and I really enjoy him. So I'm really glad that he's getting some more page time in this one as well. The only other thing that I finished is actually a Ray Bradbury short story. It's from this collection, The Martian Chronicles, and even though these stories are supposedly interconnected, I did use one of them for a standalone space for standalone sci-fi or fiction. So the one that I ended up reading is called There Will Come Soft Rains. And I don't think it's cheating for me to use this as a standalone prompt because There Will Come Soft Rains was actually published separately as a short story in a publication and was later included in this anthology. And I think the only change that he made is that he made a date on it, because all of them have dates like August 33. And so the one that I read, I think it said it was August 2057. So it's like kind of showing the progression of time and technology in this anthology as a whole. That's my understanding anyway. And I loved this short story. I feel like Ray Bradbury could become a favorite author of mine, but so far I've only read 2 of his short stories, so that makes it really difficult for me to tell. Last year for my sci-fi space, I actually read The Sound of Thunder, and it was just like phenomenal. It was like the first thing I'd ever read by Ray Bradbury, and it like blew my mind. It was so good. He explores ideas so well. And so this one is about kind of technology and mankind versus nature. And so we are following like this smart house, which is really, really interesting because that was not a thing, I don't think, when he wrote this. I don't know what year he wrote this. It says 1950, so it was for sure not a thing, but there's all these things that the house is doing like for the people and voices that are speaking and all that kind of stuff, and every other house around it has been destroyed. That's all I'll say. I don't want to be spoilery, and you find out what happens as you continue reading, but from the very beginning it's clear that this house is empty. There's no one in it, but it's continuing about its daily pattern and the daily things that it's supposed to do to upkeep the house and take care of the people in the house, even though there's no people there. And then you're also seeing like animals and things happening outside, and just like this technology and mankind and nature, and does nature need mankind, and all, you know, it's just like so good. It's very haunting. There are moments in it that I was just like, oh my gosh, like the way that he writes is so good. And actually, There Will Come Soft Rains is a poem that is actually also read in the short story as well by Sarah Teasdale. And that was really, really cool because Sarah Teasdale was a poet that we had, I think, last year or the year before in school. So I've read some of Sarah Teasdale's poems. I don't think this is one of the poems that we had in our kind of like anthology we were reading through, or selection I should say, but it just says, "There will come soft rains and the smell of the ground, and swallows circling with their shimmering sounds, and frogs in the pools singing at night, and wild plum trees in tremulous white. Robins will wear their feathery fire, whistling their whims on a low fence wire. And not one will know of the war, not one will care at last when it is done. Not one would mind, neither bird nor tree, if mankind perished utterly. And spring herself, when she woke at dawn, would scarcely know that we were gone." And so that kind of, I guess, gives some of the context to this short story. It's very brief, but I loved it. I need more Ray Bradbury in my life. I don't know why I have only read like 2 short stories by him, because both of them have just been so memorable, so impactful. And I have not even read Fahrenheit 451. Or what's the Halloweeny one that he wrote about, I think, a carnival? I can't even remember. I own that too. And I own this short story collection, and I own another short story collection, and then another book of his that I picked up these up at like library book sale for like 25 cents or 10 cents or something crazy like that when they were trying to get rid of them. And there was a whole stack of like Bradbury books, and I got them all because I'm like, oh, well, I might like him. And I do. So I really need to read more of him. So anyway, I think that's the end of this vlog, and it's the end of summer reading vlogs. I put up a poll asking if people wanted me to continue doing weekly vlogs, and it was literally split down the middle of people who would prefer occasional vlogs and people who still want weekly vlogs. So I think I'm just gonna kind of play it by ear. The nice thing about weekly vlogs is that I don't have to plan content. I'm just talking about the books as I'm reading them. But I'm reading so many big books in September that I'm not gonna finish until 2, 3, 4 weeks in, that I feel like it wouldn't be as interesting to watch me vlog every single week, because I'm just going to be reading the same books and making slow progress and not actually finishing and giving final thoughts until I'm at least like 3 weeks into the month for almost all of the books that I'm reading. So I'm just going to kind of see how the month goes. But I think that I may take at least some of September off as a weekly reading vlog. I may do some reading vlogs of books that I'm reading as a whole, so maybe you get the entirety of my thoughts as I'm reading them. Maybe I'll do that. I am doing one for my Patreon. I am doing Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. But other than that, I just think that, I don't know, it's going to be slow progress this month because I'm reading so many big books at a time. So we'll see. But I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. How did your summer book bingo go? I mean, obviously I know for a lot of you because I've seen your entries, you've sent them to me, but you know, how was your summer reading in general if you didn't participate in summer book bingo, or also if you did? I'd love to know if you have like a favorite book of the summer, or you know, just something that you really have been enjoying lately. I always love chatting with you guys in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again.